If you ask people 50 years ago to name an ancient civilization, chances are they'd say Egypt or Greece. But today, we know about many more, especially those in Mesopotamia. And if you're like me, you may have wondered why it's pronounced Mesopotamia instead of Mesopotamia. Well, today we're going to talk about these people and learn just how influential they were on the development of humanity. So get your thinking caps on, grab your books, and join us as we take a trip back to the beginning of Western civilization in Sumer. Sumer is a region located in the southern portion of modern-day Iraq, Kuwait, and Turkey, between the rivers Tigris and Euphrates. It was here that people settled as early as 6000 BC and slowly developed an agricultural way of life. But it wasn't until around 3200 BC that we see the rise of true cities. As urbanization began, larger populations led to greater specialization of labor. No longer did everyone need to be a farmer. Some could become artisans, some could become merchants, and some could do things like keep records. There were several city-states within Sumer, including Lagash, Umma, Lag, and Uruk. Of these, the last two were by far the most powerful. They fought each other frequently for dominance, but at one point also joined forces to fight off an invasion from the north by the Akkadians. That's right, we're getting ahead of ourselves again. Stay tuned, and you'll find out all about them soon enough. For now though, let's focus on In the early centuries we don't know much about it, but from around 2100 BC onward, it becomes clear that it was a major hub of trade, and its influence spread far beyond Sumer. By 2000 BC, had become the capital of a large empire, which stretched from the Persian Gulf in the southeast to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. It truly became a melting pot of cultures and ideas, leading to incredible innovation and prosperity. But what innovations did they come up with, and how did they shape the world? Let's start with writing. Humans had been creating works of art for tens of thousands of years. But a writing system is a whole other animal. The Sumerians didn't invent writing, but they did develop one of the earliest known systems, which used a series of wedge-shaped marks impressed into clay tablets. These cuneiform markings were initially used for record-keeping, such as tracking shipments of goods, but quickly evolved into a true writing system, capable of recording stories and even literature. This was a monumental achievement, allowing ideas and knowledge to be preserved and passed down through generations. Without it, the ability to communicate effectively would have remained limited. Next, the Sumerians invented the wheel. Although archaeologists have found older examples of wheels from around 3500 BC in Mesopotamia, the earliest evidence of wheeled vehicles comes from Sumer. The invention of the wheel greatly improved transportation, allowing goods and people to move more quickly and efficiently over long distances. It also helped to stimulate trade and cultural exchange between city-states. Before the wheel, most travel was done on foot or by animal, which limited the amount of goods that could be moved and the speed at which they could be moved. But with the advent of wheeled vehicles, trade became easier and more profitable, which in turn led to greater wealth and power for Sumerian city-states. The Sumerians also developed advanced mathematics. They used a sexagesimal system, meaning they counted in base 60 rather than base 10 like we do today. This allowed them to perform complex calculations much more easily. They also developed the concept of zero. Although not in the way we think of it today, they essentially used a placeholder symbol to indicate the absence of a value, which is pretty similar to our concept of zero. Their advanced math skills allowed them to track astronomical movements, manage complex trade networks, and construct massive public works projects. Speaking of public works, let's talk about their irrigation systems. The Sumerians understood the importance of water management and developed sophisticated irrigation systems to distribute water from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers to their crops. This allowed them to grow more food, which in turn supported larger populations and more complex societies. Without these irrigation systems, it's likely that the Sumerian civilization would not have been able to thrive. They also developed metalworking technology. They learned how to smelt and work with metals, such as bronze and gold, which allowed them to create tools and weapons that were more durable and efficient than those made from stone or wood. This led to increased productivity and military advancements, which helped to maintain their dominance in the region. And then there were their temples. Sumerian temples were often massive structures that served as the center of religious and social life in their city-states. They were typically built from mud brick and adorned with intricate carvings and decorations. The most famous Sumerian temple is the Ziggurat of Ur, a massive stepped pyramid that was dedicated to the moon god Nanna. It stood over 70 feet tall and was considered one of the ancient world's architectural marvels. The construction of these temples required a significant amount of labor and resources, reflecting the wealth and power of the Sumerian city-states. They were not only religious centers, but also served as administrative and economic hubs. These innovations had a profound impact on the ancient world. Sumerian ideas spread to neighboring civilizations, influencing the development of culture, religion, and technology. For example, the concept of zero eventually made its way to India, and from there to the rest of the world, and the sexagesimal counting system influenced the development of astronomy and mathematics. In fact, you can still see the influence of Sumerian culture in modern-day celebrations. For example, the ancient Sumerians celebrated the New Year in March with a 12-day festival, and they divided the year into 12 months, each month with its own special festival. This practice eventually made its way to the modern world, and we still celebrate the New Year in January and have 12 months in the year. So who were these innovative people, and where did they come from? Unfortunately, we don't know too much about their origins. As with most ancient cultures, the earliest written records only go back so far, and they usually don't mention the creation of the civilization. What they do tell us is that the Sumerians spoke a language isolate, meaning it doesn't seem to be related to any other language we know of today. This suggests that the Sumerians may have arrived in the region and brought their language with them, but we have no way of knowing for sure. Genetically, recent studies have shown that the Sumerians were related to the ancient Iranians, and that they likely migrated to Sumer from the northwest around 4,500 years ago. Evidence for this comes from a grave in the Iranian plateau dating back to around that time period, which contains items that are remarkably similar to those buried with Sumerian elites centuries later. Most notably, both groups buried their dead with ritual meals and placed copies of a religious text called the Epic of Gilgamesh inside the graves. Archaeologists have uncovered many artifacts that shed light on daily life in Sumer, providing insights into their economy, religion, and society. For example, excavations at the site of Lagash revealed a large palace complex that belonged to a local ruler. The palace contained rooms for the royal court, as well as workshops where goods were produced for the kingdom. Other excavations have uncovered homes, shops, and public buildings, providing a glimpse into the everyday lives of ordinary Sumerians. Artifacts such as pottery, tools, and ornaments have also provided valuable insights into the economy, trade, and cultural practices of the Sumerians. Overall, these archaeological findings have helped to paint a vivid picture of Sumerian society and have contributed to our understanding of one of the world's earliest civilizations. After the fall of Sumer came the Akkadians, then the Babylonians, and finally the Assyrians, who together formed the broader Mesopotamian civilization. But that's a topic for another time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out my series on ancient Egypt. Also be sure to subscribe so you never miss an exciting episode. Until next time, stay curious.